The fluorescent lights of Lisbon's Solar Fight Academy hummed softly as Miguel Costa, a black belt in Taekwondo, stood in the center of the mat, exuding confidence. His students, a mix of novices and seasoned fighters, watched as he adjusted his belt with a flourish. "Hey, cleaner," Miguel called out, his voice laced with mockery. "Fancy a quick spar? Let's give my students a show." Nia Jackson, a cleaner who had been scrubbing the gym's floors for just 6 weeks, paused. Her slender frame stiffened slightly, but her expression remained composed, almost serene. "I'm just here to do my job, Sensei," she replied, her American accent carrying a faint southern lilt from her Atlanta roots. She resumed wiping a smudge, her movements precise. Miguel let out a sharp laugh that echoed through the gym. "Come on, don't tell me you're afraid of a little fun." The 12 students present exchanged glances. Some snickered, others looked uneasy. Miguel, relishing the attention, pressed on. "Let's show these kids the difference between a trained fighter and, well, someone who cleans for a living." Nia set her cloth down, her dark eyes meeting Miguel's for a brief moment. Something in her gaze made him falter, though he quickly covered it with a smirk. "Just a friendly demo," he insisted, sensing the room's growing tension. "No one gets hurt. You in." Nia sighed, stepping onto the mat with fluid grace. "All right," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "But when we're done, you'll apologize to your students for turning this dojo into a stage for your ego." The room fell silent. Miguel's smile wavered, but he brushed it off with a laugh. Unbeknownst to him, Nia Jackson was once Shadow Viper Jackson, a 4-time European MMA champion who had vanished from the fighting world after a tragic accident 9 years ago. Nia stood at the mat's edge, her worn sneakers contrasting with the polished tatami. The students formed a loose circle. Curiosity piqued. A young Portuguese woman, Sofia Mendes, whispered her partner, "This doesn't feel right." Her partner nodded but stayed silent, reluctant to challenge Miguel. Miguel, oblivious to the unease, clapped his hands. "Gather round. You're about to see why dedication to martial arts matters." He pointed at Nia. "Our friend here probably thinks wiping floors is like fighting on them. Let's prove her wrong." Nia's chest tightened, not with anger but with a stir of a long-dormant instinct. For 9 years, she had worked to bury the roar of crowds, the glare of spotlights, and the tragedy that ended her career. During a sparring session in Berlin, she had thrown a punch too forcefully. Her best friend and training partner, Elena Spark Ruiz, had fallen, striking her head fatally on the cage floor. The official report deemed it an accident, but Nia carried the guilt like a shadow. She had vowed never to fight again, choosing a quiet life in Portugal to shield her younger brother, Kemi, from her past. "Show us a basic stance, cleaner," Miguel taunted, circling Nia. "Or is that too much for you?" The student's laughter was hesitant but stung. Nia closed her eyes briefly, old jeers from fight nights flooding back. "She's just a girl from Atlanta," they'd shouted. "She doesn't belong here." She had proven them wrong with every victory, but the cost was unbearable. Miguel made his first mistake, a light shove to Nia's shoulder, meant to provoke. Nia didn't budge, her stance unshakable. Miguel's grin faltered. "Interesting," Nia murmured softly. "It's been a while since someone tried that." Sofia Mendes, a green belt studying kinesiology at the University of Lisbon, felt her stomach knot as she watched the scene unfold. Her years of analyzing fight footage for her academic research had honed her ability to spot subtle cues of mastery, and Nia's stillness was striking. It wasn't the nervous freeze of an amateur, but the poised calm of a seasoned fighter, reminiscent of legends like Ronda Rousey or John Jones. Every muscle in Nia's body seemed relaxed yet ready, her breathing steady, her eyes sharp with a quiet intensity that Sophia recognized from documentaries about elite combatants. This wasn't just a cleaner standing on the mat. This was someone who had walked paths most fighters only dreamed of. "Sensei Miguel," Sophia said, stepping forward, her voice cutting through the gym's tense air. "This isn't necessary. We should get back to training." Her words were measured, but her tone carried the weight of her conviction. She had seen too many instances of power misuse in sports, and this felt like a textbook case. Miguel's eyes narrowed, his face tightening with irritation. "Sofia Mendez, are you questioning me?" he snapped, his voice sharp enough to make a nearby student flinch. "Sit down and learn something. This is about showing the value of discipline." Sophia held his gaze, unflinching. "Humiliating someone isn't teaching," she said, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. She knew challenging Miguel risked her place in the academy, but the injustice of the moment, turning a worker into a spectacle, pushed her to speak. The room grew heavier, the students' murmurs fading into an uneasy silence. Some nodded faintly in agreement, while others averted their eyes, caught between loyalty to their instructor and discomfort with his actions. Miguel's face reddened, his ego bruised by Sophia's defiance. He turned back to Nia, doubling down. "This is about respect for the art," he said, his voice now tinged with defensive edge. "Show us what you've got. Cleaner, or I'll have security escort you out. You'll be out of the job by morning." His words were a challenge, a threat meant to reassert his authority, but they only deepened the tension. The students shifted, sensing something pivotal was about to happen. Nia's eyes opened slowly, and the air in the gym seemed to shift, as if charged with electricity before a storm. "All right," she said, her voice low but laced with an authority that silenced the room. "But when this is over, you'll explain to your students why you turned a place of learning into a spectacle." Her words weren't loud, but they carried a weight that made even the most skeptical students lean forward. Miguel laughed, but it was a nervous sound, lacking the bravado of moments earlier. He assumed his fighting stance, his feet shuffling with practiced precision, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. What Miguel didn't know was that Nia had spent 9 years refining not just her physical skills, but her mental discipline. The fiery impulsiveness that had once defined her fights had been tempered into a razor-sharp precision, honed through years of quiet reflection and self-imposed exile from the ring. Every taunt, every slight from Miguel, only stirred the embers of a past she had tried to bury. She wasn't just a cleaner. She was a woman who had once dominated cages across Europe, and tonight she was on the verge of breaking a vow she had kept for nearly a decade. The gym, once a place of routine drills, was now a stage for something extraordinary, and the students could feel it, even if they didn't yet understand what they were witnessing. Miguel launched a crisp jab at Nia's face, his movement swift and textbook perfect, the kind that had earned him respect as an instructor. The students gasped, expecting a quick end to the so-called demonstration. But Nia wasn't there. Her body glided to the side, effortless, like a leaf carried by a breeze, dodging the punch with such minimal movement that it seemed almost supernatural. Miguel's fist met empty air, his momentum throwing him slightly off balance, his brow furrowing in confusion. The students exchanged wide-eyed glances, their earlier amusement giving way to astonishment. "Nice form," Nia said calmly, already repositioned, her feet planted with a balance that spoke of years of training. "But your shoulder betrays you." Her voice was even, almost instructional, as if she were the teacher breaking down a technique. Miguel's eyes widened, a flash of unease crossing his face. He hadn't expected commentary, let alone such precise critique. He unleashed a flurry, jab, cross, high kick, each move executed with the precision of someone who had drilled the sequence thousands of times. Yet Nia moved like liquid, her body flowing around each strike. The cross missed her ear by a hair's breadth. The kick grazed past her by mere inches. Her dodges so subtle they seemed effortless. The students watched, mouths agape, as Miguel's frustration mounted, his breaths growing heavier with each failed attempt. "Fight back," Miguel shouted, his face flushed with a mix of anger and embarrassment. He threw a wild roundhouse kick, his balance faltering as he overcommitted to the move. Nia stepped forward, closing the distance in an instant, her movement so fluid it was almost invisible. With a gentle push of her palm, she sent Miguel stumbling backward, the force calculated not to injure but to shock. He hit the mat with a thud, his eyes wide as he stared up at the ceiling, struggling to process what had just happened. The gym fell into a stunned silence, the air thick with disbelief. No one had expected a cleaner to move with such mastery, let alone floor a black belt with such ease. Sophia's phone was already out, her fingers trembling as she typed Shadow Viper Jackson into the search bar. The results flooded her screen. 4-time European MMA champion, undefeated prodigy, retired after tragic accident. Her breath caught in her throat as she scrolled through articles detailing Nia's meteoric rise and sudden disappearance from the fighting world. "Sensei Miguel," Sophia said, her voice trembling with a mix of awe and urgency. "Do you know who this is?" She held up her phone, the screen displaying a photo of a younger Nia. Her face fierce and focused in the cage, a championship belt slung over her shoulder. Nia offered a hand to Miguel, her expression calm but unyielding. He ignored it, scrambling to his feet, his legs unsteady. Who are you?" he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Nia's gaze was steady, her voice carrying the weight of her past. "I'm a cleaner now," she said, "but I was someone else. I stopped fighting to protect my brother from that world. Tonight, I broke that vow to teach you what respect means." Her words hung in the air, each one landing like a precise strike, exposing the arrogance that had driven Miguel to challenge her. The students, now fully aware that they were in the presence of a legend, stood frozen, their perception of the cleaner transformed. Nia's calm authority and effortless skill had turned the mat into a classroom, and Miguel was no longer the teacher. Miguel's arrogance dissolved like mist under sunlight. His face, once flushed with confidence, now paled as the reality of his actions sank in. "I didn't know," he whispered, his voice cracking under the weight of his mistake. "If I had—" Nia cut him off, her tone gentle but piercing. "Would you have treated me differently? Or would you have mocked another cleaner, another worker, because they lacked a belt to prove their worth?" The question struck deeper than any physical blow, laying bare the root of Miguel's flaw. Not ignorance of Nia's past, but his need to belittle others to feel superior. The students watched, their silence a testament to the shift in the room's dynamic. The hierarchy Miguel had clung to was crumbling before their eyes. Sophia stepped forward, her voice firm despite the tension. "Sensei Miguel, I've trained here for 2 years, but what I saw tonight wasn't martial arts. It was bullying dressed up as instruction." Her words echoed the thoughts of many in the room, and murmurs of agreement rippled through the students. Some nodded, their expressions a mix of disappointment and newfound clarity. Others, who had laughed at Miguel's earlier taunts, now looked down, ashamed of their complicity. Miguel's shoulders slumped, the weight of his actions pressing down on him. For the first time, he saw himself through the eyes of his students, not as a respected sensei, but as a man who had misused his authority. "Nia," Miguel said, his voice breaking with a humility no one in the gym had ever heard from him. "I'm sorry. To you, to Sophia, to everyone. I dishonored this dojo." His apology was raw, stripped of the bravado that had defined him moments earlier. He looked around, meeting the eyes of his students, some of whom stared back with disappointment, others with cautious hope. Nia nodded, her expression softening but resolute. "Apologies are the first step," she said. "The real work is changing who you are, not just what you say." Her words were not harsh, but they carried the weight of someone who had spent years rebuilding herself after loss. Sophia turned to Nia, her eyes bright with admiration. "Ms. Jackson, would you teach us?" she asked, her voice earnest. "Not just techniques, but what you showed tonight, strength with humility." The other students leaned in, their curiosity and respect palpable. Nia hesitated, her mind flashing back to the cage in Berlin, the sound of Elena's fall, the weight of guilt that had driven her from the fighting world. Teaching would mean confronting that past, stepping back into a world she had sworn to leave behind. Yet, Sophia's courage in challenging Miguel, the student's willingness to see beyond her job title, stirred something in her, a spark of purpose she hadn't felt in years. "Maybe," she said finally, a small smile breaking through. "But I teach that true power lies in character, not titles." The students murmured in excitement. Their perception of Nia transformed. They saw not just a cleaner, but a warrior who had chosen humility over glory, and in doing so, had taught them more in one night than Miguel had in months. Miguel stood silently, his head bowed, grappling with the realization that his authority had been built on fragile foundations. Nia's presence, her quiet strength, had exposed the flaws in his approach, forcing him to confront the kind of teacher and person he wanted to become. 3 months later, Solar Fight Academy was unrecognizable. Nia was no longer just a cleaner. She was an instructor, her classes blending advanced techniques with lessons on respect and humility. Students flocked to her sessions, drawn by her quiet authority and the authenticity of her teachings. Her approach was unlike Miguel's. She didn't demand respect through titles or displays of dominance, but earned it through her actions and words. She taught her students to see the value in every person, to look beyond appearances and professions, a lesson rooted in her own journey from champion to cleaner and back to teacher. Miguel, meanwhile, had lost nearly half his students after Sophia's video of the spar went viral on social media. The footage, capturing his arrogance and Nia's effortless mastery, spread across martial arts forums, tarnishing his reputation. Comments poured in, praising Nia's skill and condemning Miguel's behavior, with hashtags like #ShadowViper turns trending for weeks. He continued teaching at the academy, but his classes were smaller, his demeanor subdued. The public humiliation had forced him to confront his flaws daily. Each empty mat a reminder of the trust he had lost. Yet, in that loss, he found a path to redemption. He began attending Nia's classes, not as a teacher, but as a student, listening intently to her lessons on character and discipline. Slowly, he was rebuilding himself, learning to lead with humility rather than ego. "Sensei Nia," Sophia said one evening after class on respect, her voice warm with gratitude. The gym was quiet, the mats neatly stacked, the air free of the tension that had once defined it. "Thank you for showing us that greatness doesn't need a spotlight. You've changed how we see strength." Nia smiled, her hands busy organizing equipment, a task she still performed despite her new role. "Everyone has a story, Sophia," she said. "Never judge someone by their job or past. You might be surprised by what they carry." Her words echoed the lesson she had lived, a reminder that true power came from within, not from external validation. The Academy's transformation rippled beyond its walls. Students shared stories of Nia's teachings, inspiring others to question hierarchies based on titles or appearances. The gym became a place of learning in the truest sense, where respect was earned through character, not belts. Miguel, though still grappling with his past mistakes, was beginning to change, his interactions with students softer, more genuine. He had learned the hard way that arrogance carried a steep price, but Nia's example showed him a path forward. As Miguel rebuilt his reputation and Nia found purpose in teaching, one question lingered. Could a single night of humility undo years of arrogance, or would deeper, sustained change be needed for true redemption? The answer was unfolding, one class at a time, in a gym where a cleaner had become a champion once more, not through fists but through the quiet strength of her character.